my friend Mike Lunney and I are joined by our friend Watts. Mr. Watts, how you been, my friend? What's going on in your world?
Well, I've been great, but I'd appreciate, Derek, we've known each other for close to 35 years. If you'd really call me Mike, I'd really appreciate it.
There.
Mr. Mike Watts, it makes me sound like my age. Okay, so.
Or just go football coach, go Lunney Watts. That way we'll know who you're talking to. Just Lunney Watts.
Yeah. No, we moved to, retired from Permian and went to work for a friend of mine that owns an oil company in Odessa, and then retired from there, and we moved to Lubbock to be closer to my son, daughter-in-law, and most importantly, my grandson.
There you go.
Yeah.
So Lubbock is beautiful. I was in Odessa 37 years and enjoyed every bit of it. Raised our two boys there, and still go back quite often. And but Lubbock has been real open. There's a lot of directors up here that have retired, and it's been really a wonderful transition up to Lubbock from Odessa.
And both of you guys have retired from music education. I say that vocationally you've retired from it. Doesn't mean you don't do it anymore, but as far as a position. And I'm curious, what led to that decision for you guys? Is that something, because listen, I think a lot of people think a long time, well, when I retire, but we keep it out there in that future realm. Was there an incident or just a build-up that finally made you say, you know what, I think it's about time to start looking at retirement? Was it a flash moment, or was it just you've been planning it? I'm just curious. So I'll open it up to you guys and listen.
Well, I'll jump in.
Okay.
Spent 27 years at Permian as assistant, nearly altogether, and 17 as the head director. And there was not an incident or anything else. The administration was wonderful. We had incredibly good music supervisors. They were all colleagues and friends. I mean, dear friends. Sean Bell was my last music supervisor. And the kids were absolutely wonderful. The district was going through some changes. And at that point, I was 53. And I was going to have a new principal, a new music supervisor, and a new superintendent. And they were planning on moving the ninth graders to the high school. And if there was ever a transition time for me to think about retirement, it was then. And so, we do like we all do, I think, Mike, Derek, you weigh the pros and cons. And it really needed to be turned over to somebody that could take the ball and move forward again. Because even if I would have gone through that transition and re-educated the new music supervisor and principal and re-educated the supervisor, you still have all those ninth graders coming up. We're adding staff. It's just time for a new period. And Jeff Whitaker took over and just did an incredible job, and is continuing to do an incredible job.
Mr. Lunney, similar?
Similar. For me, it was kind of multiple factors. One, I was tired. It just seemed like it was the same, 19 years at one spot. It was kind of like, here we go again. And so I wouldn't go as far as say burnout, but I was tired. The other thing was the fact that it was just an economic decision, because I talked to the guy who helps with my taxes and my investments and so forth. And he goes, hey man, on this TRS thing, if you died tomorrow, my wife at the time, would just get what's in my account. But if I go ahead and retire and we both write it up where I get her retirement, she gets my retirement as the other one passes, she would get my retirement for the rest of her life. And so those two lines crossed in about 6 years, so it was an investment opportunity to do it. Now, granted, if you don't retire, you get a little bit more each time you work another year. But part of that was an economic decision. The other part was just wanting to do something different. Just kind of wanted to, I knew I was going to keep doing some sort of music education, but I wanted to kind of transition in the role to grandpa band director. I didn't have to argue with principals. I didn't have to argue with parents. And I had wonderful parents and principals, but there's situations, and kids.
But I appreciate the way
band, Yeah.
It was great the way Mr. Watts said that, though. And my wife tells me she's teasing. She stays with me because she doesn't want to have to teach a new guy how to do all the things. But to hear him say, to re-educate my administration, to re-educate a principal, to re-educate, that's a lot of effort sometimes.
It is.
Oh, it's a constant effort.
Yeah.
So, okay. And Mike, Lunney, I do have to comment on your microphone today. Is that like a chain lighter in the middle of that?
Yeah, I can light cigars with this, I believe. I'm not sure. Rick put it up here, so I think that's the purpose. I push this button, I can light my cigar. So if I start to puff on this end, you'll know what's happening.
So for those of you on the audio side of this, not seeing, he's got like a glowing, it's like a labyrinth or with this. So, okay, so let me ask you this. Both of you said it was a conscious decision, but did it take, and listen, we're doing this to help, right? Somebody that might be starting to have some of those thoughts. Was there a lot of preparation involved in the process of moving towards actually retiring? Did we tell people well in advance? Did we quietly make our plans? And listen, I'm not saying this subversively, but
right.
How do you go about preparing for retirement?
Hey, I'll jump in on this one. My students, administration, everyone knew 1 full year in advance. When I started summer band, I announced my retirement at the end of that school year. And that really, I know some people would say, oh my gosh, what a crazy moment, so the kids won't trust you or whatever. It was actually probably my best year of my career because, it's like the kids all knew what I was thinking. They knew this was the end of one small chapter of the Wiley history. You know what I mean? So, and they all knew that was coming. So there was not any of this like great dramatic moments or anything. They just knew that this was a decision for my family and I, and they knew I loved them and I knew they loved me. So it was a very conscious decision that was enacted at least 18 months before the actual retirement happened. So, Mr. Watts?
Well, no, it's, I started that 17th year and I got up on the tower, and if nobody's ever seen the Permian Tower, it's about 33 feet up in the air.
Yeah. Tower is kind of an understatement at Permian.
And it's got a see-through bottom on it. And for the first time, it never bothered me before, but I started to get a little bit of vertigo. And so I spent most of that season down on the field listening to music and out away from it. And John, Carroll, and at that point, as Jeremy DeWinter, were up on the tower because I was afraid that I was going to get up there. And that's when I started thinking about retirement. But when I did, I had made the decision about 3 weeks, kind of like Mike, maybe like Mike, 3 weeks into the season. But again, I don't know. I've always been, and Mike, this is not, everybody does it different. And I don't want you to take this in the wrong way at all, because you're an incredible director, and more importantly, you're a more incredible person. But I just didn't want the year to be about me.
Right.
And so I waited until after the last contest of the year, and I didn't tell a soul other than my wife, and we had worked it out. And then we had decided to, I made the announcement after that so that the seniors could enjoy the year, and everybody else, and not enjoy it. They're going to enjoy it anyway, but I just didn't want anything about me. And, but that's kind of how we came to the decision and, conclusion too.
Is there, and I appreciate both of those stories, but are there practical things that you had to do in advance of that? Is there, were there, I don't even know what the process is with the district. I guess as long as you tell them, when you tell them, you tell them. But
can I jump in on this, Mike?
Yeah.
Yes, go for it.
Hey, quit being polite, Watts.
There's
Why is it different today?
Oh, here we go. Gauntlet thrown.
Just
I'll put my band director face on it. There's several things you've got to do. Okay, now I didn't inform I found out what the date was that I had to tell them by that I was
There you
retiring.
go. That's kind of what I'm asking. Yeah.
And in my case, it was just before the end of my contract. Well, I didn't feel that was right because I was on an 11 and a half month contract. So my contract didn't expire until the middle of July. So I told myself that on May 1st, I'd let the administration know, and I told the kids at the same time. But there's several things that need to get put into the works before you just don't wake up and go, I think I'm going to retire. We made a trip down to Austin. My wife and I, we visited with TRS, had an appointment on a weekend on a Saturday morning. And one of the determining factors also is obviously it's financial, and I could sit there and I could, what I was going to make in retirement at age 53, I could teach for another 6 years, and I could make maybe $250 more a month in my retirement. So you sit there and weigh it out, and I said I can make that in the private sector, and so that was a big determination. But as far as the school district's involved, they just want, and as far as Ector County anyway, they just want to know the day that you're going to retire. TRS, the benefits kicked in right away. They kicked in August 1st, right when we retired, and so that's all the lead time that they all needed.
Right. So you bring up TRS. I'm not part of it. I hear mixed reviews. You guys think they did you right? No, that's not it. No, let's not go there. Was it easy to navigate, and has it done what it was supposed to for you guys?
Well, TRS, for those who are outside the state, that's Texas Retirement System, is what it stands for, and it's a bureaucracy. And they were always very friendly, and it wasn't necessarily hard to navigate, but I think the best word of advice, I hope I don't irritate any TRS employees, best word of advice I ever had was if you have a question about retirement in TRS, make sure you call them and contact them 3 times and then take the majority answer, because they're just people.
I got it.
They'll tell you something and then you call back and they're like, oh no, that's not it. That must have been someone training.
It's 2 out of 3. Is that what?
Yeah, that's right. So I think Michael Watts was very smart at making an appointment because you get to go face to face. I didn't do that, and nothing happened wrong, but I kind of wished I did just for peace of mind. I thought that was very smart on his part because a lot of people do that, and I probably should have just so I'd feel more comfortable. But TRS has been good to me. I don't think it's really hard to, especially now that they're really heavily into, you can do a lot of things online. It used to be you'd had to make a call at 7 a.m. and sit on hold for 30 minutes before you talk to somebody. And now you can just get on the web page and get a paper trail started. And it's a good organization. I think for Michael and I think we retired kind of in almost the golden era of retirement, because it's like right now they're changing the retirement rules as we speak, little by little, where they want them to teach longer. The benefits become different. Insurance becomes different. It's more like a 401k. And we retired in the era where it's a pension until we quit breathing. You get that same amount of money till you quit breathing. And I don't think it's going to be that way in the future. So we feel very fortunate.
Yes, no, I agree. And the TRS, they're real friendly, and
they are.
What's real nice now too is that if you call them, you can get on a K. So if you want to call back, you'll keep your number in line, and they'll call you back in a half hour, 45 minutes. But it's good to keep a paper trail whenever you talk with them. It's also good to get or dialogue emails back and forth. Just keep it, because they're just like every other governmental agency. They things fall through the crack. I started thinking about this really, gosh, when I was 35 or so, because I don't know, I just think about things ahead of time, I guess. I don't know. But I started thinking about my quarters then, and started my Social Security account back then to make sure that I qualified for those 40 quarters.
See, I love that. And that's because I'm not necessarily a forward thinker that way. And I'm not ashamed to say that in my household, Sharon knows. I haven't seen a check in, I can't even tell you how many. Sharon being my wife. So I'm not the financial guy in this situation. So I don't necessarily think that. So I'm glad to hear you say for others like me, it's something you should think about. Maybe that's a good way to put it. Cool. So,
But you're young, you're working at building your program, your kids. You're working hard. You get tunnel vision, and I know Sharana, and thank goodness, Derek, she is taking care of things. But but my wife Sally, my wife Sally did the same thing. She made sure that, just prodded me through this, hey, you just did band camp. Okay. Yeah. Did you get your 1099? Yes. Did they file Social Security? Yes, they did. Okay, good. There's another quarter. So I would just recommend to the younger directors that you can never think about retirement too early.
that's what I was waiting to hear. And we look at it like an ending. That's why I'm so glad to have both of you guys here today. I don't think it's necessarily, maybe more, listen to me, I haven't done it, so I can't, more of just a transition into other things, or did it feel like an ending to you guys? Let's bring it current. How has retirement been for you?
Yeah, let me jump in on that one. I think for me, with retirement, it was a transition. And there's a certain part, if you're a band director, orchestra director, choir director, where you work with kids every day, and that's your community, kind of you have your family, then you have your work family. It is a weird transition because all of a sudden you just kind of leave the house and all of a sudden you're outside. And so for me as a director, that's what kind of led me into really doing a whole lot of clinic work, because it kind of let me reattach with that. And one little disclaimer I want to throw in here before we get really any further in it. We are not representatives of TRS. We are not attorneys. We are only telling our strange and bizarre life experience of retiring. So, anything, yeah. So I just want to put that out there. So please don't tell TRS, well, I heard on the Ask Mike podcast that, so it must have been law, so we'll just throw that out there. But yeah, it was a transition. It was interesting. It was really interesting. Okay. Mr. Watts?
Yeah, no, it was not an ending. It wasn't a stop. What I did do though is I can't go into just me. Ever since I was little, I mean, I can't do something without throwing myself into it 100%. So when I started with this oil company, I stopped judging, stopped clinicking, stopped for a year because I just felt it was important. He was paying me a lot of money to take care of his company. I mean, I was in charge of hiring and DOT and all of the regulations for explosives and insurance, payroll, everything else. And so I just felt it was important that I do that. And so for a year, I didn't really keep up with things very well. But after that year, I thought, okay, I'm going to answer the phone. And, you're kind enough to have folks and friends around that call and say, hey, have you got Tuesday night open? Can you just come on over and listen? And so that was refreshing. So I could find that I could do both. And it's just like Mike said earlier too. It's not an ending. It's a beginning of a different nature. It's so nice to be able to walk away from the rehearsal after giving them your opinion and not have to follow up with a parent or with a little flute player over on the side crying because she's out of step all the whole time, or it just isn't. It's nice. I miss the kids, but I don't miss that part of teaching. I had some good advice from some real good friends in the music industry and in the directors and also in the private industry and everything else. And without exception, every one of them told me that take 4 months, 3 months, and 4 months before you decide to do anything. Okay? And that's real difficult because all of a sudden you're going from a real nice paycheck to what you're going to get from TRS, and you're thinking, okay, how do I make this transition financially? I'm still paying off debt from tuition from my kids from Tech and UT, and on and on. And so, but I did take that time, played a lot of golf, fished, and it was real beneficial.
What's life like on the other side? Did you go? Now I need to ask this question too. Both of you do clinic work. Both of you do consulting to an extent. Was that part of the plan? Did you know that was going to be what you did? Did you make plans for that?
Yeah, for me it was. There was no doubt in my mind that that's what I was going to do. Kind of like you harken back to those percentages. When I was teaching full time, it was 10% teaching, 90% bureaucracy. And now it's 90% teaching and 10% bureaucracy. I just finished a week-long camp with the wonderful Jim Ned Indian Band out at the Methodist encampment here. And we stayed on property for a week. And it was so nice to sit in my little rocking chair on the front porch and sip my coffee while the poor band staff had the kids lined up with so-and-so did this. And so, yeah, the things you deal with. And then I just get up and I go teach. I teach marching and whatever. So that was definitely something I was going to do. Yeah, even when I was out of Florida for a little bit, I helped out with the Seabreeze High School Sand Crab Marching Band. That sounds like SpongeBob. But yeah, in Daytona Beach, Florida. Yeah, and I just did it for free because I just thought it was such a cool name. And they were only like 200 yards from the Atlantic Ocean, so you could hear the beach from their practice field. But they were the sand crabs from Seabreeze High School. So
I've seen marching groups. I knew those like sand crabs.
Yeah, it's true that. Yeah, we don't. Yeah, but for me, it was definitely what I was going to do, and I think Mr. Watts had a whole different journey in that. But I guess the main thing is, I would say definitely have a plan, because there's only so much Jerry Springer and Price is Right you can watch before you go absolutely insane, or even the wonderful Gary DeShazo, he told me one time, he goes, Mike, there's only so much golf you can play before that gets old after a while. So I'll drop it at that. But yeah, that was my plan.
It's so nice to have these younger directors and directors around that appreciate what you did earlier and want your help. And, I guess I'll stop when they stop asking, but I've just been fortunate enough right now to, I go up to Plainview when I want, the guys around the area here ask all the time. I was just down in Odessa yesterday. I mean, they're all over, pre-UILs and phone calls and it's nice.
Mike, I'm going to ask you, Lunney and I have kind of a mantra that we won't let go of, that we think mentorship is so important, especially young guys. I realize we're talking about retirement today, but would you agree with us that you can't be, if you're a younger guy, there's plenty of guys like Mike Watts and Mike Lunney out there who are ready and willing to offer advice or to help you with your group. If you have a question, don't be scared to reach out to guys. Yeah.
My first clinician I was 22 years old at Camelback High School in Phoenix. Jim Keene had just taken the job at the University of Arizona, and I had him up in January that year. And I didn't know Jim Keene at all, but he was at the University of Arizona. So I had him up, had an evening rehearsal. By the time that rehearsal was over, I was ready to find a truck driving school because there was nothing in there that I could write. And he let them know. He said, by God, he's got a favorite quote that, y'all have a pencil on your stand and you got enough air. He says, you don't use either of them very, very well. But at the end, he died off the podium. I told the kids, see you in the morning. And then he looked at me and says, hey, let's go get dinner. And then we just talked about music for all the time. And from that point on, he's just a dear friend. But you can't have that. You have to find a way to not have any type of insecurity about your program, no matter what level it is, because you can always find a way to improve it. And so young directors that are listening and, just ask. That's all you have to do, just ask. And even if they can't do it, they'll send you somewhere else saying, well, I can't do it this weekend, but Mike Lunney might be able to. Let me give you his phone number. So it's
Hey, and I tell you what, with the clinic stuff is really awesome for us to do. Some things to think though about the teacher retirement. One is we'll kind of step through these. These are kind of the brass tacks moments. But make sure when you retire, if you're wanting to work, make sure you know what your employment after retirement things are for TRS. Study that completely, because my own personal story, I came back from Florida and there was a job opening in a nice, a wonderful little 2A town, and it was up near where my son was going to medical school. And I thought, man, I want to do that. That'd be kind of cool. So I almost put in my application, but then I called TRS and I said, yeah, I laid out my 12 months. I hear this clickety clackety. On the other end, they go, no, you sub 2 days at Cooper High School in Abilene. If you sub for 1 day, if you sell tickets at a game and you draw off as a W-2 employee from any school district, then you have to go from that point and then do your 12 months. So like 1099s don't count towards that. Subbing doesn't count towards that. But this was like I don't. It worked out to where they wouldn't allow me to do it without forfeiting and with my pension. The scary part is if you don't follow those rules, ignorance is not considered, excusable. That they will forfeit your pension. So you've got to really be careful with that. Make sure that you do it exactly right. I'll also follow up with that and say that school boards are not nefarious in how they do it, but do not trust the information they tell you, because they want to hire you. And they go on, well, Jim Bob said this and Susie May said this, and we had a guy do this 10 years ago and this is how it worked. But yeah, I've seen situations where it was real brutal. There was a man here in Abilene that was a retired band director that had to pay like $20,000 back into the TRS because of those situations. So be careful with that. Make sure you talk to TRS about that. If you want to keep clinicking and doing things, there are certain criteria.
Can I also throw something else in?
Yeah.
All right. So I go to work in the private sector and I'm pulling a salary. I'm also pulling my retirement. And all of a sudden I take all my statements into my accountant. And he goes, oh, hey, Mike, everything looks good, but you owe another $20,000. And I just hit the floor. If you do rehire, they're going to take out your taxes based on your income with that school district. They're not going to take a cumulative income. So all of a sudden, this threw me up into two different brackets. And thank goodness you can pay your taxes in October. So I did that. But if you are gonna work, make sure that you're taking extra out, because otherwise April 15th is going to catch up on you, and it's going to catch you.
It will. And with these school districts, it's a great opportunity. They need band directors, choir, orchestra, etc. They actually need more math teachers, to tell you the truth. But I think it's going to get easier and easier to rehire, but it's not going to be any less complicated to rehire. The school districts are not obligated, at least in Texas, to pay you whatever step level you were at when you retired. It's simply a negotiation, okay, for band directors. So keep that in mind. So if you've got 31, 32 years experience as a band director, don't think that I could just retire and then rehire and I'll be at step 32. It doesn't work that way. Now, right district, they want you bad enough, they'll negotiate up higher, but that's not necessarily how it's going to go, And there was a time when, I don't know if, Mike, if you fell into this, but there was a time when you were rehired that you paid what we lovingly called a penalty, because we didn't pay into TRS anymore. So if we all come back to work and we're not paying into TRS, it becomes a house of cards. It becomes a Ponzi scheme, because we're not paying into TRS and drawing and working and drawing money out of the system and replacing a person who would be paying into TRS. But right now, the schools have to pay that. They have to pay that penalty. But then they can kind of, since we're negotiating, guess what? They can fudge that around. You know what I mean? So be ready for some negotiation. Put on your best economic hat and get after it, guys. Okay.
Hey, while you're talking about that, though, I know, and I don't know if this is a negative term to people, but we call it double dipping, that I've had friends that retire in Texas that teach in New Mexico. Is that, is that
I know one.
not putting anybody on the spot? But is that an easier process than working again in the state of Texas?
Fortunate Bill Allred, I've known Bill for a long, long time. He just called and said, "Hey, what'd you think about doing this?" And it just all worked out. But yeah, New Mexico, several of my friends in El Paso do the same thing. They teach over in Las Cruces or just across the border, and they get their 40 quarters, and they also double dip. And in New Mexico or even in Texas, if you're doing anything other than school work, you can double dip. I mean, I was getting my full retirement from TRS and pulling that salary from a friend of mine that owned an oil company. And so we paid off a lot of debt. And the only thing that hurts is your tax bracket. The other thing was health insurance. I was on Medicare. They don't care. In New Mexico, they don't care. I was charged $68 every check for their medical system that I wasn't going to use, and they didn't really care. They didn't want to hear that I wasn't going to use it either. They didn't care. So
sure.
I lost about $800 for more than that, about $1,500 for the year. But they did honor the amount of years I taught and all, and it was real nice, real good experience.
Yeah, part of my question was sort of, now you're dealing with two state bureaucracies as opposed to one, or was it an advantage to?
No, once you get started with TRS, you're kind of on autopilot. Okay, you get your check every month. Of course, I called them to find out whether or not that was going to, and I called them twice. I didn't call 3 times, Mike, but I did call twice. Make sure I got.
But if you get agreement twice, then you're good.
Yeah. But I did call them to make sure that if I was working for a school district in New Mexico, was that going to affect my pension from TRS? They said not at all. So I just went for it.
Texas teachers who are thinking of retiring, again, read that material carefully, because I'll tell you one little tiny corollary. And I actually heard a director say this to me this last couple of weeks, saying, well, I just thinking that they could just put me down as a volunteer and just kind of happen to pay me. And it says verbatim, you will forfeit your retirement. And it's something as simple as this too. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of talking behind closed doors and whatever, but you are not allowed to sit there. Like when I'm retiring from Wiley, it would have been, I could have lost my retirement if I was talking to the superintendent and saying, hey, I'm going to retire on June 1st, but I would really like to go ahead and come back and work a year from now. And so why don't you go ahead and just kind of keep that in mind, and that, oh yeah, we agree to do that. And if there's any kind of documentation of that, oh my gosh, that's grounds for losing your entire retirement. So don't toy with this. This is not like a tax refund. You know what I mean? You're talking quite a chunk of money, because it's, for us, it's to our dying breath. It's not when the money runs out. And in regards to like medical insurance, I know everyone complains about insurance. I understand with medical insurance, but like for TRS right now, it's $200 a month. And my out of pocket is like
it just went down to 110.
Yeah, so it's in my out of pocket's like, I think it was like, I should know. Like I just went through a big major medical thing, but it's like $7,000 and deductible $1,600. Where like my brother, his was like, I don't know, like his deductible is $15,000. It's catastrophic kind of medical care. And I've had good luck with it. I went through a whole thing with cancer, and I had really good luck with my insurance. I was pleased with it. Plus, it was the exact same policy I had when I retired, and I saved $600 a month by retiring. Well, go figure. It's the same policy, Well,
when we retired, I had a real good, when we retired, I don't know, Mike, you can, it's not that way now, but when I retired, if you left the TRS medical, you couldn't get back in.
That's right.
So I kept paying $200 a month for all those years.
Just to hang in there.
But my employer at the oil company, he had a wonderful insurance policy. I mean, incredible. So I did that, and it was free. Yeah. So I did that, but I paid my $200 to keep in. So when I did retire from there, I had it, but my wife wanted to talk about Medicare Plus and whether or not we were going to keep it or go with another company. And she researched it all and talked to several folks, and every one of them that had sold supplements for Medicare said we couldn't beat the TRS Plus, the on top of Medicare. So we kept it. And like you said, we've been real pleased with it.
Yeah. And you were brilliant in how you did it, because I would leave that as advice that if you can afford the $200 a month that when you retire, even though you're going to another corporate situation, hang on to it. Because once you pull out, every once in a while, they'll send out a little snippet saying, we're going to have open enrollment for like 5 days, and they'll accept people back in, but it would actually be worth the $200 a month to have a secondary insurance. That's if the person retiring can afford that, because don't get yourself caught up in working for a company and then all of a sudden that company disappears. And then you're going, oh, what do I do now? So that's great advice for the ones who are thinking of retiring, to think about what their insurance plans are going to be. And I guarantee I'm a very paranoid person. I'm probably the most overly insured person in this world. You know what I mean? And it's I just kind of operate that way for peace of mind. And I would definitely hang on to that. Even if your plans were to use another policy, just hang on to it, because you don't know what the future brings. And then I'm kind of thinking in terms too about when we do retire, helping out with the transition of the other person or whoever's replacing you. It's okay. I'm just saying this in terms of it's okay to go back and volunteer. You just can't be paid for it. So I didn't want that to be misconstrued, that you can't just come back and help out with the program. You can come teach sectionals or whatever. There just better not be any kind of paper trail of this, you were hired 1099 and you're filling out paperwork or whatever. So I just want to kind of put that out there, that it's obviously you can retire, and TRS doesn't give a rip about anything else in the world. All they care about is if you work for a school, a public school. That's another good corollary, a public school.
Yes.
You can work for a private school, and it does not affect, Derek, your TRS whatsoever. You can literally double dip in the city of Dallas, if you're working for a Catholic school as their music director person, so that's another option. I know there's some guys in Lubbock and Midland, Odessa that work for private schools, and a few of them are retired and they're working in that. So I don't know if it's a rehire, but they're, some people might say double dipping, but I call that brilliant. I don't call that anything other than brilliant.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
go for it.
Yeah.
If that school district pays anything into TRS, then you got to avoid it.
Yes.
Boy.
That's it. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Everything else, no, go for it, man. But
Yeah.
even if you're, again, and I don't know whether or not, I would just, like Mike said at the beginning, man, just double check. Every time you think you're going to say yes to something, call TRS, just to make sure it doesn't affect your benefits, because they deal with so many. You're on your own, and so.
Yeah, and the hard part is we have these mentors in our life that have helped us musically, and then even now this is anecdotal information. We're telling you what we've lived through, but we trust those men and women to help us, and then we turn to them for retirement advice, and it's good to do that, but double check and triple check, okay? And I really loved what you said about the income tax, because I ran into that in my first year of retirement, and then I went back and just wrote in, I think it was an extra $400 a month that I had them just take out, because the tax that they take out does not really cover what your tax is going to be if you're working an additional job. So that's not their fault. That was my fault. I should have seen that coming. But that's one I can lay money on. You know what I mean? That is absolutely, you're never going to lose in that situation, because you're eventually going to get that money back otherwise. But I would put $400 to $500 extra into withholding, in your retirement when you retire. And you can change that at any time,
I don't think either one of you guys regret the decision you make.
No, I don't regret it. I think it's you reshift priorities.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's no doubt the other side's pretty good. I will say this, though, that a lot of times we don't start planning for retirement early enough. Now I sound like some kind of commercial. But my dad was a real strong advocate of that. And so even when I was like just getting out of college, he was asking me verbatim. He was a tech sergeant in the Air Force, so I didn't argue with him. He said, how much are you investing? How much are you doing this? And he goes, you could put away like $200 a month right now. And when you turn a certain age, you'll have this much money through compound interest. So he really pushed that. And the reason I say this is because now when I go clinic, I think I spend maybe a third of my time teaching music, a third of my time trying to help them with burnout for the directors, and the other third doing financial coaching. Because they're like, what do I need to do to retire and blah, 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 kind of thing. It's like, well, do this. Don't buy a new car, buy one that's 2 years old. And, all the things we know that, if you want to see a person who's going to stay lower middle class their whole life, just make sure that it's that person. You'll see them with their brand new car every 2 years, and they'll have like the 51 vacations posted on their Facebook, and they live like a rich person, but they're just barely hanging on. Okay. And then you see the guys that drive the 10-year-old Nissan Sentra, and they're a head director at some big mega school, and you're going, yeah, that guy, he's doing it right. Kind of deal. And my dad really pushed that. He did. But yeah, we need to push that in terms of retirement. We talk about retire, rehire. This also goes out to all those young teachers. If you can find $25, that you can just put somewhere when you're 22 years old and then forget about it, then the next year turn it into $50 a month and so forth, it will change your life. Because that retirement, like you said, Derek, boy, does it come up quick. One day you're just on the top of the world thinking, oh man, this is great. Then you're thinking, I want to do something different. Oh, I haven't really planned for this.
This side of life is great.
Yeah.
Grandkids, we go on trips with them, and it's really good. But I get back to Mike's point. You have to plan for it. How many directors we know that they get out and they retire and they can't do anything. So they haven't done any type of even a little bit of investing when they were younger. You just try to get that, like Mike said, just try to get that instilled in the younger directors. $25 a month, $50 a month. Boy, that compound interest going to pay off in dividends. And
I was just going to say, for those younger teachers, time is on their side.
Yes.
If you decide you want to start investing when you're 50, time is not on your side. And I will say there are some doomsday stories of, I know some directors personally that, and I hope I don't end up falling into this category, but it could happen, but they retired early, and then as inflation crept up on them, they couldn't quit being a rehire.
What?
Because they couldn't live, because they've been, and I've known directors who were teaching, it's amazing, until their 80s, and to their late 70s, teaching daily because it just became a financial responsibility or liability for them. And I hope I don't fall into that, but I don't know for a fact whether I will or not. There could be some health situations, whatever. So that's another thing that I just want to throw out there for all those men and women thinking about this. Every year you stay as a full educator, your retirement goes up 2.3% in Texas for your retirement. So if you go another 10 years, that's a 23% increase in what you get yearly or monthly or yearly, whatever, but it definitely falls into that. And I think it's for us guys, I think it's like 36 years or 41 years, whatever it is, where your retirement actually is equal to your salary. And I've known teachers who retired and made more money retired from TRS than they were making in salary. Think about that. They got like 110% in retirement because they keep getting that 2.3%. That's how much they love teaching. So there's two sides to that. Some teaching for a long time, but they actually get a pay raise when they retire because TRS pays them more per year than their actual average of their highest 5 salaries.
I love hearing you guys say this stuff, this practical, real talk, because sometimes the creative just doesn't think about this stuff. So
yes, and I would definitely say that I think I ran into Mike Watts and I, we knew each other, but we spent an afternoon just by coincidence watching an area marching contest, our region marching contest, and we sat there and talked for about 6 hours, and now we're like best of friends. But I can guarantee you that I think he and I think a lot alike. We fall in that category of I feel like we're creative individuals. I feel like we're musical individuals, but we have this strange OCD, we take care of the numbers kind of personalities. But you're right, a lot of people who are ultra creative, they just don't live in that world of, I don't even care what's going to happen in 20 years because I'm creating right now, and this is a beautiful world. I kind of respect that.
You have to take care of the numbers and take care of yourself and your family at the early stages of life. You just have to.
Yeah, and if you don't really feel like you can, find someone you pay to take care of your numbers. It's worth every penny.
Yeah, Sharana does a great job. My wife, Sally, she'll take care. She'll do it for you.
People laugh at me, and even Sharana sometimes, just to make sure everybody understands, Sharana would be, my Sharana is my wife.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'm sorry.
There's times I say,
Sharana.
Yeah, she loves that. I hope you guys sing it every time you see her. But I'll ask her, I say, can I do this? She said, why are you asking me?
Yeah. Do you get an allowance or how does this work?
No idea how much. But the valid point is know yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you know that you're not taking care of this, find somebody that will help you that you trust.
I was just going to say it's harder now than ever because with our economic situation and just the one simple fact, when I received my bachelor's degree in music education, it cost me $8,000. And now it would be about $80,000 with room and board. And I took a job for $15,000, which was almost double my college degree. So if you think about that nowadays, they should make $160,000 a year as a band director in regards to the ratio to their degree cost. And so the people coming out now, it's harder. It was easy for me to find $25, $50. Oh my gosh, you got to, you've got to live crazy cheap. Lots of beans and rice if you want to try to do it. So I feel for them coming out, but we're talking retirement, but retirement starts your first day of work. Your first day of work that's when retirement starts. Okay.
Well, guys, I'm going to ask you as we kind of start to wind down, are there any other thoughts you have regarding retirement, planning, how to live in retirement, anything else you guys think?
It's just one thing I just want to throw out there and kind of finish up my end of it. Find some kind of path in retirement, something to do. I mean, you can help watch your grandkids. You can work for Habitat for Humanity, do Meals on Wheels, work inside your church. Please don't have that, I'm just going to give up everything kind of thing and just sit in your house. Because I've seen directors do that. I think we all have. We've seen directors who retired and they just didn't disappear from the music scene. They just kind of withdrew from the world, And so if you want to have a good retirement, plan for it. TRS will give you enough to be comfortable. I mean, you'll be able to live, kind of thing. But you've got to make sure to have something that's of relevance in your life.
I couldn't say it any better than that. The relevance is, I think that's the one thing in retirement that you have to find that in order to not stay young, just in order to stay alive, mentally and physically. That relevance of some sort, whether it's with another program or your grandkids or writing a book or podcasts, or whatever. It just keeps you young. And I just know that Charles Neal and I talked about this on Thursday. You work so hard to stay young and relevant, because if you don't, it's just a big abyss. And you fall into that abyss, and it's real hard to get out of. And so just have a plan. It's like Mike said, have a plan. And you work towards making that plan work, and it's a lot of fun. It's just enjoyable. And no matter what it is, I went to work for Lowe's hardware store. Still, it's a plan. You're out being relevant.
Right.
So, may not know where the screwdrivers are, but hey,
Let me find somebody to help you with that.
there you go.
But Lunney and I have had this conversation before. Isolation is the enemy.
Oh, exactly.
So if you go into hiding, you're only hurting you.
Mm-hmm.
And we're created to, I'll try not to get too off the ooey gooey side of it, but we were created to participate, give back, and to help where we can. I mean, I think that's where the happiness comes from.
Yeah.
Finding a way to give, to help, to participate, as opposed to hiding.
Oh, exactly.
It's well said.
Well said.
And I would say the three men on this podcast, yes, we got paid for what we did for a living, whether it's through music education or working for a music store, but we have servants' hearts. We really, I'll speak for myself. I get a lot of gratification from being of service to someone else. That's a big love language of mine, I guess. But I just know you two gentlemen well enough to know that you have servants' hearts. You're not out to out authoritarian somebody. You just want to help people out, because we had people who helped us, and we know what it feels like when we need help.
Bravo. No, exactly. Bravo.
Gentlemen, I'm going to tell you, I appreciate you both. I've seen both of you in action before retirement, and now that I see you walking out what you said you were going to do after retirement, it's a comfort to know that there is life that goes on, and we still get to actively participate in it. So I wish you both the best. I know you're both great granddads. I hope you find time to help those young people in your life have some of the same opportunities and some of the same understanding. But Mr. Watts, thanks for joining us, man. Mike,
anytime. This has been a blast. I love talking band and life. I love talking life. And it's this has been a blast. I appreciate you guys so much, and what you do. This is a great tool. Got a great tool. I just appreciate it.
Hey, but it's good to see you, my friend. It's good to see you.
Likewise.
All right. Well, I promise you, Mike Watts, we will find another way to get you back in here. I enjoy listening to you. And again, young people, listen. And don't just listen. Make notes and make a plan, because you'll be where we are faster than you realize. And it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah. If I knew I was going to get this old that quickly, I would have taken better care of myself.
Gentlemen, have great days.
Thank you very much.
You too, Derek. Appreciate you, buddy.